And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence.
It was 1776 when the founders signed the writ of independence from the Brits. It was revolution.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Republic News Radio 101, We the People. Right here for your Republic, for the United States of America. Plain and simple, everybody, come home to your Republic for the United States of America.com. Mr. President, it's an honor to be back.
Well, thank you, Gator. It's good to hear your voice. We have an absolutely full house today. As you know, we have a special guest with us, and he'll be introduced a little bit later on. Gene Hurtler is going to tell us about him. In the meantime, I thought we would say a little bit about how the Democrats are encouraging gun sales across the country. Do you know about that?
Encouraging gun sales, yes, sir, because they want to take away our guns. I urge the entire country to go on out there, check out the sales. You get a lot of new guns and everything else, and ammunition. Make sure you have plenty of ammunition.
I'm hearing from people that never have bought anything like an AK-47 that they're out and about getting them now because you kind of wonder, have the gun manufacturers encouraged the Democrats to do this?
Well, maybe, but I think it backfired on the Democrats. They think, well, we're going to go after guns, we're going to take your guns away, and on the flip side, they're actually advertising for the NRA and great patriots around our country to go buy more guns and ammunition. Mr. President, I think I'm going to put my order in for Gatling guns and cannons. I want cannons on my front yard. But, well, we have to protect ourselves, plain and simple. Let's all remember the Second Amendment, America, tonight.
Amen. Thank God for our ancestors. Thank God for our forefathers. They did their best to protect us from ourselves, so to speak. Now, we have a lot of folks on the line with us. I'm going to call on David Hurtler, if he will, to start us off with a prayer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm honored to lead in prayer. Let us bow our heads. America, we're calling out to you. Father, we ask that you would anoint the listeners that are on this call tonight. We pray that you would anoint all of us to be speaking and that you would take over this call, that you would speak through us, that your words would be in our tongue. We are depending on you. We are vessels for you, and your republic is what we're concerned about. We know that the solution to America is the structure. If Christianity must be considered the structure on which the whole foundation rests. Our laws will not have permanence of power without the sanction of religious sentiments, without a firm belief that there's a power above us that will reward our virtues and punish our vices. If Christianity must be considered the foundation on which this whole structure is. It's because of Christianity that we can have free institutions, permanence, purity in our institutions across America. And so we're depending on this biblical government, your government, to be raised up. And we pray, Father, that even on this program, that the voices heard across America will create a fever pitch. And I ask this in Yeshua's name. And everyone said, amen.
Amen. Thank you, David. Now we're going to go now to your lovely wife, Gene Hurtler, and she's going to introduce our special guest, Gene Hurtler.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Major General Paul Vallely retired from the United States Army in 1991. General Vallely graduated from the United States Military Academy at West Point and was commissioned in the Army in 1961, having achieved a distinguished career of 32 years. Having retired in 1991 as Deputy Commanding General of the United States Army, Pacific, and Honolulu, Hawaii, this honorable gentleman served in many overseas theaters and also served in 2 combat tours in Vietnam. His background includes years of special operations, psychological, and civil military operations. His biography is extensive, his resume probably pages long, and to say the least, it is captivating while also amazing. General Vallely has been a military analyst on television and radio for over a decade. He was the senior military analyst for Fox News for nearly a decade. He is also a guest lecturer on national security, international political economic issues, strategic planning matters, and the global war against radical Islam and other threats to America. He is at least a 3-time published author. Along with Lieutenant General Thomas McInerney, they authored the book Endgame, Blueprint for Victory for Winning the War on Terror. General Vallely is well known for his published articles on a multitude of subjects and issues. He is the chairman of the Stand Up America U.S. project that he founded in 2005 as a public policy research organization formed and existing for the purpose of promoting discussion on the principles found in the United States Constitution and Declaration of Independence, while making application of these principles to present public policy issues. I'm privileged to be a member of this outstanding network of patriotic Americans from all walks of life. I became acquainted with General Vallely when he was hosted at least a couple of times on our Republic News Network program with Dan Happel and Bob Barnett some years ago. Listening to him sparked a great deal of hope in my being that God has his people in various places working in an amazing fashion on the restoration of the American Republic. I count General Paul Vallely as one of my personal heroes, and I'm sure that soon he will be one of yours too. General Vallely, welcome.
Well, thank you, Jane. I want all your listeners that don't believe everything she said, you know. It's far too long, and nobody could live that long to do all those things. But thank you, Jane. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Welcome.
Well, we can discuss what you'd like today. I do want to say for all of you that are following the Second Amendment and arms, I have formed my own arms company called Nemo Arms. And if you go to it, it's nemoarms.com, Nemoarms, emoarms.com. You'll find we make some of the finest weapons in the world at Nemo. So anyhow, I just wanted to let you know that. But happy to engage and discuss whatever you would like to today.
Well, thank you, General Vallely. And you wanted to share with us maybe about stand-up organization?
Sure.
Of course, we're happy to discuss most anything.
Well, no, that would be fine. I formed the Stand Up America U.S. organization, as Gene said, in 2005. And it was that time, it was almost like it was inspired by God to come up with a phrase and something at that time to start standing up for our great country. We could see the deterioration occurring in our society that I tracked back to when the majority of that started, and that was I'd say the late 1960s in the anti-Vietnam era. And I noticed deterioration, in our universities, our colleges, the types of people we were electing to government. And so that's why we formed the Stand Up America organization. We primarily focus on national security and threats to the United States and the American people, though we do meander a little bit into politics, and especially on an article that I just wrote called The Rule of Law, which I think you all will appreciate that we need in this country. But we have an extensive network throughout the United States into the Middle East. I'm one of the few generals that's been inside Syria, went in there twice, trying to get support for the Free Syrian Army and the people there against Assad. Could not get Obama to support anything, as we saw thousands and thousands of children being maimed and killed and severely injured. My most recent project is Iran, to seek a free and democratic Iran. So I'm working very closely with some expatriates from Iran, who, by the way, have already written up a constitution for when that new government would come in place. So there's a lot of things we're working on. We try to do as many events as we can for our veterans and for other organizations. We support Charlie Kirk at Turning Point. And if you're not familiar with Charlie, he's on about 225 campuses. We also support any kind of youth movements which stand by our Constitution, therefore supportive of our republic. So there's a lot of things we do. I probably do about 4 or 5 interviews a week. I even do Russian television out of Moscow. I'm like the only voice over there that can reasonably tell the Russians and others, exactly what we're doing here in America or what we're intending to do. So from that standpoint, 2 weeks ago I was in the White House and had meetings there. I'll be happy to discuss that to the degree that I can. But for today, I think I'd like to focus on what you would like to ask me and what your major issues or concerns are. So let's do that if you don't mind.
Certainly. And I know that Americans across the board are concerned about the southern border. And just a little bit, I've heard about your visit to the White House, that maybe some of that entailed a discussion on the southern border and maybe some of your suggestions to President Trump.
Okay. I'd be happy to do that. We provided President Trump a border control plan, security plan, about a year ago. He initiated the first part of it about 10 months ago, where we said, you've got to put active duty forces. This is a national security issue, and we need active duty forces. I said in that also that they haven't executed yet is that you can't win this border war just by playing defense. And you can't do it just by building a wall. The cartels are funding the opioids. They're funding international terrorist organizations. And the cartels have to be neutralized and destroyed. And, of course, the only way you can do that, being a military guy and a good football fan, you can't win by just playing defense. So we need to go on the offense. We need to destroy, working with the Mexicans, hopefully, destroy those cartels, which are funding a tremendous amount of the crime and the drug problem in the United States. So I would look to President Trump as he completes building the wall to go on the offensive, and we've got to take out these cartels because they are a direct threat to the security of the United States.
Well, you're focusing on the cartels and what little bit I know about it, because I definitely don't have the intelligence assets that President Trump has, but just looking in from the outside as an American, it looks like the cartels are maybe the cartels are controlling the government down there. And to some degree, those cartels, or the money that's coming from those cartels, may be controlling some of our politicians up here. So
money speaks. Money speaks. But here's the thing. We go into the Middle East. We have great intelligence gathering capability in our military. We've got great special operations forces. We can do covert activities over the border into where the cartels are, because we know where they are. We can find out where they're located. And through special ops and helicopters and air, hopefully working with the Mexican Marines, who are very good, by the way. But we have to ensure that if you identify those targets, and if they're leaked to the Mexican government, because we know some of them are on the payroll of the cartels. So to do covert operations, you've got to be very careful, but that's what we need to do next. And that's what I advise the president to do.
I'm just curious, you said you were on Russian TV and trying to explain to the Russian people what's happening over here in America. What types of things do you share with them? Maybe that would give the average American some insight on what's happening in our country from a third-person point of view. What would you be sharing with the Americans?
Sure. No, that's a great question. Well, I was invited to Moscow in 2017, just 2 months before General Flynn went over, and I briefed General Flynn before he went. I had the opportunity to speak over there at their national security seminar that they had for the Middle East. At that time, a good friend of mine who I've got to become friends with is Ambassador Bogdanov, who's responsible for the Middle East for Putin. I met him in Paris. But what's interesting, we met him in about an hour meeting, and we discussed having Gorbachev type of get-together between Putin and Trump, just like Gorbachev met with Reagan. And that was in March of 2017, and I wanted it to occur in Reykjavik. But as it turned out, the head of the American desk there, a young Russian woman, says, why don't we do it at the G20 meeting in June? And by darn, that's when Putin and Trump met. So it depends. A lot of things you can affect when you're on these trips and doing things, and we're very proud to do that. But one point I want to make before I go into the Russia, a lot of people don't know it, but Stand Up America gave President Trump his national theme, America First. We wrote the American First papers in 2014, and you can Google it. It's very long paper, about 9 to 10 pages. Gave them Past to Glory as a theme from the Revolutionary War days, and then we gave American First theme, and he picked America First. So I'm not bragging about it. I'm just saying we do our homework. We try to help where we can, and we're very proud that we provided the president that. But back to Russia, I talk mostly on security items, national security threats. Russian television, if you don't watch it, RTTV, is larger than BBC now. And it's larger than our individual media outlets like ABC, CBS, Fox News. And they're run by the government, owned by the government, but they're very good in covering items such as what's going on in the world and the Middle East. So I would say you should watch that once in a while. You'll get a different look of how other people look back at America, particularly the Russians. And so that's one of the reasons I do it. I don't give away anything. I just discuss things that are out in the press, for example, or out in the news, such as the recent attacks by Iran and in the Middle East, what Iran is doing in Syria, what we think they did in Saudi Arabia here in the past week by the attacks on the oil refineries there. So that's the reason I do it, just to get out my outlook on what the situation is, particularly in America and what we're doing. But I don't give away any secrets, that's for sure.
Now, you mentioned the Saudi Arabian incident that's going on right now with the fires. I'm just curious, do you have any inside intel on who the perpetrators of that most likely were? I know we're hearing different things. Go ahead.
No, it all goes back to Iran. And they say it came out from Yemen, the Houthis, but we found that they couldn't fire those kinds of, and even launch those kinds of drones and rockets from Yemen. And so the recent report we got in yesterday, some of it was launched from southern Iraq and the drones from Iran. Because the Houthis in Yemen, they're what we call one of the groups that, like Hezbollah and Hamas, that Iran supports. The question is now what's going to be done about it. The Israelis continue to bomb in the corridor going across southern Syria. Every time they find or find through intelligence an Iranian buildup or a missile site or an arms missile location, the Israelis take it out. So the Israelis are doing that actively every month. My only question is, I think it's a good question if somebody could ever answer it, Saudi Arabia buys billions and billions of dollars from us, but yet they don't seem to do much other than bomb Yemen. Now, I would think they would have anti-missile defenses around those refinement sites, but evidently they didn't. And we know, and I got this through sources inside Iran wants to take over those oil fields in northeastern Saudi Arabia and the Persian Gulf there, and then down into Oman, which is south of the Sea of Hormuz and the Arabian Sea. So Iran has plans to take over those oil fields. Now, with that, we provided that information to the White House 2 weeks ago, how Iran was taking on a side door, taking its crude oil and moving it south of the Sea of Hormuz into Oman, if you look on a map. And that's how they're getting out to get revenues and money back in from the sale of Iranian oil. So Iranians are very clever, but they're having problems because of the sanctions. There are continual demonstrations over there. The people are very unhappy with the mullahs. They would like a free and democratic society over there. So, and the name of that project, if you want to Google it, is called Cyrus Force. C-Y-R-U-S, Cyrus Force, Iran. And that's a project you're going to hear about more and more as we go on here.
I think President Trump would be more in line with supporting any efforts of the Iranian people to overthrow that regime than President Obama would have been. Do you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you have anything to say or add about the billions that Obama gave to the Iranians? I mean,
yeah, 60 billion or whatever it was.
It's just uncomprehensible.
Well, what can we say about Obama?
Me.
I mean, everything under Obama, the military, everything. You know, he set this country back so much. You'll find once Attorney General Barr comes out with his finding and indictments, that this whole thing goes back to the White House and directed by John Brennan and the CIA, this whole Russian collusion. and that's a whole different topic. So we're waiting day by day now for the Attorney General to release his findings and go forth through a grand jury with indictments to put these people in jail. And I think you know who we're talking about.
Absolutely, and the American people are fed up with it.
Yep.
One of the things we've talked about here on the radio recently, not Russian collusion, but Google collusion, where Google, actually, I think there's 50 states attorney generals that are working on this issue of Google influencing elections purposely, swinging elections towards the Democrats. Do you have any knowledge on that particular subject? And that's a big deal when you start talking about elections. And it's a lot more influence being taken place there than there ever was or could have been by the Russians.
Well, I probably don't know any more about that than you do from what I've seen and listening to the professor and his videos out, by the way. I can't remember his name, but they tracked through Google influence at least 2 to 2.5 million votes in favor of Hillary. He said it could have been as much as 8 to 10 million, but they couldn't quantify it. But that now you see is a full court press against Google, so they will not influence those elections in 2020 because, you know, most of Silicon Valley leans very left. And they don't think of the Republic as we do or understand the Republic as we do. So hopefully the Trump administration and the Attorney General, and they're going to flesh this out so that there's not going to be any manipulation to sway votes one way or the other.
Thank you, General. I'm going to ask Jean Hertler if she's got some questions for you, so I'm not the only one asking questions here, and we'll go around the table here and see who has other questions. Jean?
Thank you, President Geiger. I'm very interested in the organization that you created called the Stand Up America. It's standupamericaus.org. Got to make sure you have the U.S. in there. And if you talk about missions and goals on that, why did you start this?
Well, I'm trying to think back to 2005. We had some meetings out here, and I was still with Fox News at the time. But I started to get the feeling or understanding that there weren't a lot of Americans standing up for our Constitution. Even at that time, as I look back, I found out a lot of members of Congress weren't standing up. I even looked at the politicians we had out here in Montana, and no fire in the belly, not standing up, being warriors. I was looking for warriors for leadership in Washington, in our state capitals, but I couldn't find many. I don't know whether they just didn't have it inside them, the intuition, the leadership qualities to be a warrior, and that's what I call it. It's warriors, and warriors that stand up, just like we had of those warriors that founded our country and our Constitution. And so, again, I don't know whether it's God-inspired or not, but whatever it is, we founded it, and here we are today in 2019, alive and well, and trying to set the record straight and have Americans protect and stand up for this great country. Because we're in dire shape right now, as you well know, with this continual movement to the socialism and the communist left-leaning liberals that are destroying this country. Lack of respect for our government, lack of respect even for our military in some ways. So it's even more important now, Gene, to be able to stand up and be a warrior and make sure that we keep this country strong and that we move forward and they don't take us to the left into a socialist society.
Absolutely. And my husband David and I, as we have been students of American history and dived in, we've been fascinated with our history, with our roots, with our heritage, and we realized that we really weren't taught much of our American history when we were in school. So our children didn't, and certainly our grandchildren do not unless they're homeschooled, and we give them that biblical worldview and education. So we saw an indoctrination, and then in the 80s we saw Christian people leaving Congress. They were leaving those political positions because of corruption, and look where it got us. So our perspective is that education is critical. The people have to know our history because that's our heritage. And I see on your website you make a lot of that available. You've got those founding documents there and other things to reference.
Correct. Yes, we do, yeah. Well, and I would encourage everybody. I mean, we can talk about a lot of things today, but your audience should surely go to standupamericaus.org and in our archives and everything that we've studied. Again, we work with 18 to 20 different organizations throughout the country, and so we're able to gather a lot of information that we can put together some reasonable platform for the American people to make judgments about our future. And I think that is critical. And those are the things, Jen, I think you're talking about. We've got to get back in the schools again. And again, I track back to the late 60s. A lot of those anti-war people got into our institutions. They became professors. They got in our high schools, and you can see where it's led us today.
Absolutely. I would like to exhort the American people to consider going to that website and join, participate. The best articles, the latest news, you're going to see articles there, you're going to see information there. It is an organization of integrity. And then also consider donate and support as you're able. As General Vallely had mentioned, some of the organizations that Stand Up America US supports, like Charlie Kirk and other great organizations that are outspoken out there working to save the vestiges of our country. And with that, I thank you, and I yield back to you, President Geiger.
All right. Let's go to your husband, David Hertler. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. President. It's an honor for me to be speaking to you, General Vallely. I'm so glad that you decided to come on this program. Today being Constitution Day, we here in the Republic have believed for some time that they put the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence with the Bill of Rights. They stole our rights from us in dormancy. And so what we did, of course, is we re-inhabited the Republic going back to 2010, but we lost it going back to 1861. We believe that Christians across this land and patriots who have been labeled to be terrorists by Homeland Security and SPLC and so forth, to change the meaning of terrorists in that, we believe that what's holding up America is this 1954 thing, 501c3. It's kind of put a wrap or a gag order, if you will. It's kind of gagged the churches across this land where they don't want anything to do with politics. And we know that going back to the formation of this country, going all the way back to the Pilgrims, bringing it up to 1776 with the laws of nature and of nature's God, we know that they built a culture around God's Word, and we lost it with relativism and complacency today. My question is, we believe that the church, Christians across America, need to be involved with politics, as Finney said, going back to the Second Great Awakening. You're going at it a different way. We're going up the same mountain. We're going up different sides. We need help. We need to be coached. And if you had any wise words to tell the Republic, to tell us how to gain the church to stand up our Republic and get our Constitution, get our Declaration back, get our rights back, have our three branches of government working the way it should be in all 50 states and in Washington. Would you coach us? Would you give us what you think we need to do, sir? With that, I yield to you, sir.
Well, I think if you go back, we have so many religious groups out here in Montana, it's incredible. But I'll give you an example. I'm a Catholic, and our priest that we had, who's now left the church, was starting to preach a lot of the stuff coming out of Rome and from the Pope. And a lot of it was very left-leaning. They wouldn't take on the illegal border crossers, for example, illegal immigration, as some people call it. So I challenged the priest on that. I said, listen, you're going to follow your Christian beliefs, and we help each other and so on. We understand that. But on the other hand, you have to understand the reality, too. You've got a spiritual side of things. But the preachers, the ministers, the priests, they have to understand also the reality. You have to look through the reality prism. And you have to help your parishioners in understanding both sides. So it's great, the spiritual, but if you're not looking at the reality of things and you're saying, okay, well, the church is raising all this money for these migrants coming up from Honduras and Guatemala, you're encouraging them in a way, and you're not supporting the president and the immigration policies which are by law. But so my point is, if you belong to an established church, you've got to make sure you engage whoever has the pulpit. And that pulpit, he's got to be looking through the reality prism into what's going on today. And they've got to preach that. But we find the gathering now, we find many young people getting back into the church. And that's very important. So I think we continue to be very vocal about that with our neighbors and our friends, that they be good Christians. And if they look back in the history of the churches and what they stood for consensual marriage, standing by the laws of the church, they're against, abortion. We look at all of the things today that are all these social issues. But if we go back to the findings and the beliefs of Jesus, that will strengthen us. So it's a constant preaching thing, and I know it turns a lot of the millennials off when you start doing that. I can look to my own family in that regard. So that's one side. The spiritual side is absolutely critical that we emblazon that today to be a force. I would like to recommend to you one other thing. And I don't know whether have you heard of the Hermit of Loretto? It's the Hermit of Loretto. And it was a Catholic priest that went to Loretto. And he'll tell you the exact year what was going to happen in America. And he said, Donald Trump will be the man that comes to save America. It's called the Hermit of Loretto. And that's why on election night, it was a spiritual arising. I would think it was divine intervention that brought us Donald Trump. I really believe that because I prayed that night as many as you have done also. So the spiritual side. We also have to be involved in the local schools. We cannot tolerate these teachers that are excluding history and the books. We've got to go back to study the history of the Constitution, back to the days of the Romans. We have to study all of those things as I did in school, and I'm sure many of you did, to understand the history of the world. With that, we have to understand also what's going on in the world. It's tremendous what effect the media has now and Hollywood has on our population. Spewing out hate, disgust, crime. It's just horrible what they're producing and what they're reporting on. And fake news is fake news. Just look what happened. They try to come up with this impeachment again for Kavanaugh based on an allegation from his college days. And they found out that was fake news. They didn't do their homework. The lady who supposedly was involved in that doesn't even remember it. So we've got all these battles. We've got battles on our borders. But Russia's not our threat. We're building up all this big threat against Russia. Doesn't want war with us. Iran may. China's a big problem from a standpoint of economics, but the president's working on that very hardly to get a deal done. But we have to help him because he's not getting much help at all in Congress. There's only a handful of Republicans. The Republican Party is in shambles. It's just a horrible institution. We won't even talk about the Democrats. But I am so embarrassed by the Republican Party and the lack of what I call fire in their belly to support this president, who continues every day to try to do things for America and for the American workers, for the American people. Whether you're black, Hispanic, or whatever, he's out there trying to get you jobs and make a better life for you. So those are the things I would do. And we can't rest on our laurels. We've got to be active.
Thank you, sir, so much. I want to ask you one short question here. In all your travels, going back to Vietnam and so forth, and all your travels and what you've observed in other countries, and if you would give me on a 1 to 10 scale, what do you think the world thinks of America today? In all of your travels, 10, they love America, 1, they absolutely hate America. What number would you what would you come up with? What do they think of our flag? What do they think of America? What does the world think of America today? Thank you, sir.
Well, for years, we were getting a bad rap for getting in unnecessary wars like Vietnam. Iraq was an unnecessary war. So we created, through these escapades of warfare in different parts of the world, and that developed a lot of hatred for America and what we were doing. Now we're on a new track with President Trump. We're mending our relationships. Even Europe now, if you look when the president goes to Europe, he's the dominating factor over there. He actually is a world leader right now. And so with that spread, a lot of people say, well, they hate him. Well, they really don't. He got a really great support when he was in London and England, for example. They thought, oh, they would boo him out. The London mayor was an idiot. He was trying to make all sorts of comments. But they ended up really liking him. I think in that regard, as I go around now, more people like this than not. A vast majority respect us. They know what we do in the world. They know about our economy, our high-tech world, and that we're making the world better at food and health and so on. So I would give us an 8.5 out of 10.
That's encouraging. Mr. President, thank you, Mr. Vallely. Where's General Vallely? Mr. President, I yield the floor back to you, sir.
Thank you, David. I have a request from General Vallely since he meets President Trump, and that would be along the lines of, President Trump wanted to meet with me, for instance, back during the run-up to the election, and I told him it wouldn't be wise because the media would make a circus out of it, and I wanted him to win. And we call him the spearhead republic, and like you, General Vallely, we thank God for President
Paul's okay.
Trump.
Paul's good. You're doing your part, and just by standing up for the Republic and the Constitution and what that information should get out credibility-wise, develop that through as much of America as you can, and you're on the right track. There's no doubt about it.
Well, let President Trump that we're more than willing to work with him. We know he's the spearhead of the Republic, but the Republic absolutely needs to be restored to its original intent that our forefathers gave us. And he's learned, as you have, as we all have, that the system itself is broken. And I don't know of any way of doing it other than just completely restoring the Republic. So communicate those things with him, and God bless you in your efforts around the world.
Well, thank you. I'll do that, and I really appreciate meeting all of you and having the opportunity to discuss some things today. And as the time is available, I'll be happy to do it again if you'd so like to do that.
Now, Jim Carpenter, if you could have a few more minutes, I think Jim Carpenter had a question for you.
Okay.
Jim?
Thank you for joining us this evening, General. I'd love to drink a cup of coffee and spend some time playing Connect the Dots with you, but I know that's not appropriate at this time. But I do have a question that you addressed earlier in the conversation, and that was when the arrests start happening. Many of us are a little uneasy with that thought because there's so much hate in America being fed by the radical left. Are you concerned, or is our leadership in Washington concerned about the repercussions when these arrests start?
No, that's a great question, and sure there'll be unrest, but there's already unrest. They're just going to add fuel to the fire to a degree, but it's got to be done. We've got to do what's right. And people that have instigated, such as Brennan, Comey, these guys, created a soft coup against a duly elected president. They got to be held accountable. Whatever the consequences are, you've got to do right, and you've got to be able to stand your ground. And so we have to do this. Of course, the media will charge and, they'll make all sorts of accusations of fake news and all of that. But if you have faith, as I do, and hope that if we do the right thing, we're going to get through this. But we have to hold people accountable when they violate our laws and they try to do these, what I call seditious activities, treasonous activities. They've got to be handcuffed. They've got to be put in jail.
I totally agree, sir. And I don't say that out of fear because you're right. It has to be done. If the world's watching this, they know what's going on, probably better than a lot of Americans.
Sure.
And we're going to be neutered in their eyesight if we don't stand up and abide by what we say we are.
Exactly right. The rule of law. The rule of law's got to apply to everybody. It's got to apply to you and me, and it's got to be applied to the elected officials. And the problem is we haven't been putting these people in jail. Look what they've done to General Flynn, a great soldier, an officer. Just what they did, they bankrupted this guy, ruined his career. but that's how nasty they are and have been. And the swamp is alive and well still. It's going to take several more years to clean that swamp out. But it's got to be done.
Yeah. And the roots run deep. And
yes, they do.
The reason that they run so deep throughout our fabric is they've had an agenda for many years, many centuries, and pursued it.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
We're going to have to change people's perception of reality in order for them to be able to accept the change. And it's going to take respected men and leaders like yourself and others to stand up and speak out. And I do commend you for your efforts at Washington, D.C. there in educating our legislatures, our Congress, introducing them to some new thoughts in the past. I appreciate your efforts, sir. I salute you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. We're all in this together.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll yield.
Thank you, Jim Carpenter. Well, General Vallely, any parting words of advice to us? Any parting words of advice to the American people? Words of encouragement today for you.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on as your guest. I hope we covered some of the major issues and concerns and be able to provide some solution and support our president. I would just say keep marching forward. Don't give up hope. We have to have faith because we are going to solve these problems and keep this country strong. We have to really believe that. We can't have weakened knees up against these socialists, that's for sure. So anyhow, thank you again, and I've got to run now. I've got another engagement. But, Gene, thank you for introducing me to everybody and asking me to be a part of this. I really appreciate it.
General Vallely, thank you so much for joining us. It meant a whole lot to me and to all of us. God bless you, sir.
God bless all of you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, General. We're going to go now to Roger Waters. Roger, you had something for us today. You might want to see if you had anything to add to General Vallely's conversation and go into your presentation.
Well, it's always interesting to me, being a military guy myself, the impact that somebody like him would have upon the American population. I remember watching him on Fox News, and I always made it a point to try to be there, in front of the TV, because I always knew that when this guy spoke, there were fire in his words, and he meant what he was saying, and he didn't go on just because of ratings. He had something to say. He wanted to say it, and it had a lot of validity, in his message. So to have him here on our call is, first of all, a great honor. Second of all, I think the impact that listeners will have is probably beyond what we may even think. So very appreciative of the fact that he took time to come on. This is a guy that's very much, wanted by a lot of different outlets out there. I know he's a busy guy. He said that he served in Hawaii. Well, I know where Schofield Barracks is. I was stationed in Kaneohe Bay. I just got something real quick I'd like to share. Here in Indiana, 2 weeks ago, we had a doctor die. And it was up around the South Bend area, which is up towards East Chicago. And when the authorities went into the guy's house, they found 2,200 fetuses of aborted babies in bottles that the guy had stored down in his basement. Now, I know that sounds like it's coming out of a Hollywood horror flick, but in reality, the man used them as trophies. Now, he was like 68, 69 when he died, just a couple weeks ago. And the police were shocked when they went down and found all these fetuses. Come to find out, he lived in Illinois, had 3 offices, one in Huntington, Indiana, one in South Bend, and another one up around the East Chicago area, where he performed abortions. When they went to the offices, they found out that even after his death, the the places of where they were producing, the abortions, they had already done 2 live birth killings by just stuffing them in a bag and throwing them in the trash. Now, this is after birth, so, if there's any question about the abortion thing, well, a fetus is not a human until it's born. Okay, well, if you want that argument, the baby was born, now you put him in a bag and throw it in the trash. That's called murder. So there's going to be some hot and heavy investigations going on in northern Indiana now because, well, we've got abortion clinics up in that area that are committing murder. Now, there are states like Virginia that condones live birth abortion, what they call it. Next week, I'm going to talk about how all this began, how it all came about, the terms that they use, like the word choice, pro-choice, pro-life. When did that start? How did that start? You'll be amazed at the beginnings of that. And I'll put it all the way back to the 70s. And there are churches and denominations that are involved in all this. And you may be going to one of those denominational churches. And I hope you're not. But if you are, I hope you get out, because if you are, you're paying for the abortions. And you don't even know it. That's the sick reality of the corporation. And it was brought on even more by Mr. Obama. And like the general said, he did a lot to destroy this nation. Boy, we are just now finding out how much. And Oprah, his best sidekick, she said it right on her show. We just got a few weeks before the great transformation of America. And my only question then, and it still is today, is Oprah a friend of America? Or did she just make all her billions and slap and spit America in the face? That's my question. With that, Mr. President, I yield.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us, Roger. It's a horrific story. Horrible to hear such things taking place across America. That's not the America I grew up in.
No, it's not.
Well, we're going to go now to Jim Carpenter. He's going to wrap the show up for us. Jim, you got a tough job of summarizing the show for us today.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. It was great to have General Vallely on our program. I know he has spoken before with us. He's a great man and a Christian leader, and we need more of that. And there's a lot of them out there. Stand Up America is a strong organization with deep ties, and we're privileged to have had him on. There's a lot of things going on. Our opportunity is coming quickly. General Vallely addressed it well. He said things that need to be done, and they have to be done, and they're going to be done. If they're not, then we're not who we say we are. So, buckle up, America, and enjoy the ride. I think that our opportunities upon us, and thank God for people like General Vallely that are deeply engaged in the background in their own ways.
Thank you, Jim Carpenter. Let's go to Dean Henney. Dean, what would you like to say about the show, and then tell the American people about their republic?
Thank you, President Geiger. Thank you, everyone here from our republic for being on the show this evening, and also America Stand Up, America.org. Take a look at what our General Vallely is doing for America, and thank him for his service in America. Educate yourself. Go to republicforunitedstates.com. Take a look at what's going on in your republic. Where do I begin? You can find out what the Republic has been doing. Donate to the Republic by ordering T-shirts, hats, bumper stickers. Also, you can donate to the Republic by ordering the books at freeinhabited.com.
Volume 1 is the Re-inhabitation of the Republic for the United States of America, Volume 1, America's Truthful History, written by Dave and Jean Hertler, and also Re-inhabited Republic for the United States of America, Volume 2, the story of the re-inhabitation, Jean and Dave Hertler authors. And also pick up a copy of your Constitution circa 1860. Never forget that the Holy Bible was used for the law form to write that great document. Gator, close out the show for us.
You know what, ladies and gentlemen, all you great, amazing patriots tonight, what we just heard was absolutely outstanding. General Paul Vallely, God bless you, sir, and thank you for your service to our entire country. Matter of fact, I think they need to get you out of retirement and join President Trump and his administration. Thank you once again for your service. First off, I want to thank each and every one of you for your service. All you great patriots out there, veterans, and so forth, coming together right here with the Republic for the United States of America, everybody. And I want to remind everybody tonight that your Republic News Radio 101 station is 24/7, 365. We need to tell everybody about this. You'll hear shows, you'll hear past shows, you hear the Gator shows, you hear all this great stuff. But we are America. We are patriots here, everybody. And I commend each and every one of you for what we're doing, standing up for our country. Tonight was an amazing, amazing gathering of great patriots. I commend you all in general. Sir, thank you. Thank you for coming aboard your Republic for the United States of America tonight. Mr. President, I say to you, sir, I thank you for your leadership. Your leadership for all of us. And soon enough, I feel, maybe you and others, maybe even me, we'll have to pay a visit to President Trump. Let him know what's going on out here with the Republic. The Republic for the United States of America, everybody. Come home to your Republic. Plain and simple. So, tonight, everybody, I thank you. I thank you all for coming aboard. God bless you. God bless your families. And God bless America.
It was 1776 when the founders signed the writ of independence from the Brits. It was revolution. Now an enemy from within would enslave us all again and deprive us of our rights in the Constitution. Restore the Republic. Wake up, it's time to understand. Restore the Republic. We're losing our freedom in the land.